took them around 14 years to take Zomato from startup to IPO, right? Now I'll give you examples of 4 companies that I have taken from zero to IPO in much shorter time.
The moment you talk about impact entrepreneurship, people start thinking it's non-profit. So how do you make that shift?
जो investor है, हो सकता है impact investor है, हो सकता है VC हो. You should be able to present a business case to both of them. Remember, investors, while they make a lot of effort to understand your predicament, they will never be able to understand it. मेरा एक मित्र था, उसने मुझे बोला था, Vineet, you are not a venture capital fund, you are adventure capital fund.
Hi, I'm Dr. Poulami Chaudhuri. I'm the CEO, co-founder, and I also lead the science at Helex. So at Helex, our mission and vision is to make accessible and affordable therapeutics for the kidney space, making high-quality genomic medicines that can be brought home. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Swati Pandey. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Arboreal. We manufacture and supply specialty food ingredients to food and beverage brands. We started with one single product, which is stevia. It's a zero-calorie natural sweetener. But over the last 2 years, we have now diversified to a range of other specialty ingredients like vegan proteins, fermented proteins, cacao ingredients, etc.
My name is Akshita. I'm the co-founder of Trestle Labs, Kibo, where we are an AI tech company in the intelligent document processing space. We started 7 years ago with the vision and mission to make education and employment inclusive for persons with blindness and visual impairment. And in the process, we sort of developed a technology that can derive meaningful insights out of printed and handwritten documents for the visually impaired and also for industries like banking, insurance, and education.
Hi, my name is Vineet Rai. I'm the founder of Aavishkaar Group. We manage around 40,000 crores of assets. We have made 110 investments across India, Southeast Asia, South Asia, and Africa. And I'm happy to be here.
So maybe we can kick it off. So today, as we are here to ask you about impact entrepreneurship, being an investor and being an entrepreneur yourself, we all have always been in the shoes of a founder. So from your perspective, and we've pitched to so many VCs, and yeah, there are more no's than yeses. So as a VC who invests into impact entrepreneurship, which sectors do you think you prefer in terms of funding? Because it always becomes a difficult sector to choose when you're thinking about impact entrepreneurship. So would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So I think when we talk about impact entrepreneurship, it's not the entrepreneurship that is delivering the impact. It is the idea behind your business and how it integrates with those who are considered excluded in some form or the other. So you can look at farmers, you can look at disabled people, you can look at people who are semi-skilled, less skilled, people from lower quartile of the economic strata, and it's a fairly variable thing. You can actually produce from the poor, sell it to the rich, you can produce for the poor, by the poor, you can have something done by the rich for the poor. There could be many different ways. So really an idea that can convert something which looked incredibly difficult to do. For example, how do you make farmers' income double in 5 years? That's what he is trying to do. Or you are trying to do, or you are trying to do. So how do you integrate the idea of change, bringing about change in those who do not naturally become the markets, make you an impact on them? Largely focusing on the idea itself, not the sector so much. Though there are some sectors that will always lend themselves easier to explain on impact entrepreneurship. If you are going to work with artisans, it is easy to actually explain. If you are going to work with farmers, again, very easy to explain. But what you do with farmers becomes very important. As time is passing, especially from the European context, they are actually getting lower and lower down on the value chain, which has a reverse impact because our total addressable market is becoming smaller and smaller. So there are some inherent contradictions in the way impact entrepreneurship or impact investors will also come back to you. And then you will, as an entrepreneur, say, hey, you are trying to push me in a corner where my next round may not come. You may provide me money. So this is an inherent conflict in any new idea that emerges because market context is changing all the time. So the poor of yesterday, are they poor of today? The answer is no. If they are, then your and my existence is bad. So are we actually annihilating our own market? Are we becoming irrelevant to the markets? Some entrepreneurs have come and asked me, is impact entrepreneurship a transitioning product? And the answer is yes, actually, because your and my job is that the impact part of our business should actually cease to exist, so that all these people actually transition to what is known as mainstream market. So this is slightly more nuanced and complex. As you actually scale up, these questions will become starker and more difficult. But so important for you to keep this in mind, that there is no straightforward answer. And the investor is as confused as the entrepreneur is. So do not feel bad about it. You will see all kinds of political and non-political reasons. हो सकता है somebody sitting in West doesn't believe a femtech startup in India is worthy of being seen as an impact startup. Not understanding the context in Indian market. So context, impact therefore is contextual. Invariably the decision making about impact is being made by people who do not understand the context. And that necessarily is one of the inherent contradiction and challenge that we all face in impact investing.
So, Vineet, when it comes to investing in entrepreneurs, right? When you look at impact investing, what are the timelines that you look at? Because it's usually said that impact entrepreneurship in general takes longer, and social impact startups take longer to succeed. Have you seen that direct connection between impact and time, in terms of actually making it a success?
I can give you reverse. I invested in many companies, but let me actually narrate 2-3 companies and then take an example of a mainstream company. So Zomato is a mainstream company, right? And Sanjeev Bikhchandani is on record saying it took them around 14 years to take Zomato from startup to IPO, right? Now I'll give you examples of 3 companies or 4 companies that I have taken from zero to IPO in much shorter time. So let me actually start with Equitas, small finance bank. I met Vasu in 2008, signed my first check in 2008. The company listed in 2015. We exited fully. Utkarsh 2010, 2023 listing. Faster than Zomato. Suryoday, even faster. In 2009 I invested in. And I think 2008 also I did Credit Ramming, which actually listed again in 2018 or. All the 4 companies actually went from zero to IPO in less than what Zomato went. So these are myths that are created because there are inherent biases in the mainstream against the impact space, partly because there is higher volatility. In our space, there is higher volatility because हमारे यहाँ बहुत सारे हैं. Weather has a role to play. Politics has a role to play. I mean, microfinance has itself suffered because of politics. Weather has a big role to play since you are in agriculture and other places. Population density, concentration, then the population that you are trying to address is probably in the states which has probably poor infrastructure, poor supply of electricity, etc. Those then becomes bigger this thing. But also you have bigger and concentrated populations as well. But then when it comes to wallet size, you have a smaller wallet size. So it is better to serve Mumbai, even on the low income side, than actually to serve UP, despite having a much larger economy and a much larger infrastructure. Because density बहुत है, लेकिन फिर भी spread out है. आपको बहुत ज़्यादा मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी, and there are biases. So the same level of poverty in Mumbai is much more forward-looking and probably much more disposable income than the poverty in Eastern UP would be. So if you are operating in Eastern UP, you are probably challenging yourself more. From an impact point of view, great. But from a investor point of view, probably challenging. And that's the contradiction that we all deal with.
Just a follow-up question on that. But as an investor, I mean, do you obviously, I mean, you are also looking at financial returns and, impact. But when it comes to, like you said, that if you're going to Eastern UP, the impact is going to be more, but probably it will take longer for you to succeed. So how do you reconcile that, right? I mean, say if you have 2 startups, with very similar business models, but one is working in UP and another one is working in Mumbai, which one would you choose?
Quality of entrepreneur. So for example, I invested in Equitas, Chennai, focus South India, great. Again, based on entrepreneur. Then I actually chose Govind Singh in Varanasi. No history of microfinance except one microfinance institution, all challenges. And Govind took slightly longer than Vasu. So the reality is it is the quality of the entrepreneur, also changing circumstances. So it's not that UP is the same. 2010 of UP, people started laughing at me when I actually made the choice. But in 2021, nobody laughs. So things change over time as well. At the end of it, there are three questions that you ask. माइक्रो फाइनेंस में गरीब लोग कम हो रहे हैं कि ज़्यादा हो रहे हैं और कहाँ ज़्यादा रहते हैं? ईस्टर्न यूपी में ज़्यादा रहते हैं. So it's easy and logical that there will be a much larger demand for microfinances. First. Second, do I have an entrepreneur whom I can trust, who will fight not 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 12 years, till the time my institution is built? Do I believe in the entrepreneur's ability to fight and build the institution? That's the second ingredient in the decision making. And the third, is my capital good enough to actually make the entrepreneur reach point where they can actually go on to the inflection curve? These are the 3 points that we normally think about when we make the choices. The geography is not so relevant. The quality of the entrepreneurship is.
So I want to understand the transitory nature which you specified. So 7 years ago when I and my co-founders started Trestle Labs, our focus was to make education and employment inclusive for a person with blindness and visual impairment. And in that journey, we build a technology that can extract printed and handwritten content and make it accessible in the form of an audio. And lately, over the last couple of years, a lot of other industries have reached out just to have an access to the tech that we have built, because it can also solve some of the industry challenges in banking, insurance, and other places. So, what started predominantly as something that we built for our friend in our college and took it up is now a business that is also, multifaceted. So, how do you look at that, terms in the factors like transitory nature of an impact business, scalability of an impact business, and also the return on investment that can be expected out of, a business?
So, easier way to relate to your क्वेश्चन इज, मान लीजिए दिल्ली से लेके गोरखपुर आपने एक हाईवे बनाया. तो गोरखपुर थोड़ा बैक एंड बियॉन्ड है, दिल्ली जो है कैपिटल सिटी है. आपने एक बहुत बढ़िया 8 लेन हाईवे बनाया. क्या आप इस हाईवे पे सिर्फ साइकिल रिक्शा चलने देंगे? वुड यू वांट टू रिस्ट्रिक्ट अ मर्सिडीज बेंज और अ कार टू ड्राइव ऑन इट कि नहीं जी गरीब लोग के लिए बनाया है, गोरखपुर जा रहा है तो सिर्फ साइकिल रिक्शा जाएगा? नहीं, आप साइकिल रिक्शा को भी जाने देंगे, बट यू विल नॉट स्टॉप अ कार टू गो. आपका मोटिवेशन जो है is to solve the problem for those who are excluded. But it doesn't mean that if you have come up with a better solution, that you would allow those who are included to not have access to a better solution. Because then you are also, by mistake, excluding others. Always see an impact investing journey as a journey of a road, and whether the road can only be designed for somebody. So हम लोग साइकिल ट्रैक्स बनाते हैं, सिर्फ साइकिल के लिए होती है. वो इसलिए होती है क्योंकि कार वाला जो है साइकिल को नुकसान पहुंचा सकता है. So you can create sometimes those tracks, but that is the job of the investor. That's why it's an impact investor. But nothing stops you, because अगर आपको साइकिल से मोटरसाइकिल पे जाना है तो आपको सड़क की जरूरत पड़ेगी. And nothing should stop you from doing that transition unless आपका कार्बन फुटप्रिंट ज़्यादा नहीं बढ़ रहा है. If your cause is कि मैं कार्बन फुटप्रिंट नहीं बनाना चाहती और उसके बाद भी आप मोटरसाइकिल पे जाती हैं, तो आप instinctively आपको मालूम है what you stood for, you have actually dropped somewhere. So I think it's a conflict of transition rather than whether your technology should be used. So if you don't drop the blind or the visually impaired and in supporting them, but can add and support more people, that's great. But not at the expense of those who say theirs.
Yes. I had a quick question. So, as you were mentioning the words impact investor, impact entrepreneur, I mean, they should not be exclusive of each other. Every investor should think about impact investment, and every entrepreneur should think about impact that they create. How do we make that mind shift in terms of thinking about it? Because the moment you talk about impact entrepreneurship, people start thinking it's non-profit. So how do you make that shift? Because you've been in the shoes of, being an entrepreneur and being a VC from both ends. Like, how do we convince an investor that yes, I'm creating an impact, but it's equally profitable? And from the investor point of view, that yes, I do see the impact, but this is also profit. What would it take for us to convince them?
When you're sitting in front of a venture capital fund, you very specifically, the impact is always private, so keep that in mind. Impact आप करना चाहती हैं, जो investor है, हो सकता है impact investor है, हो सकता है VC हो, you should be able to present a business case to both of them. Invariably, when you meet an investor, don't try to actually teach them about impact. Teach them about why you came to the idea. Invariably, there your story of impact will get captured. That everybody wants to listen. Then you switch over to what is the size of business, how you are going to build this business, and why. And remember, not every business is logical for a venture capital investor. There are some businesses that actually grow like this, they are logical for venture capital investing. The businesses that grow like this and are profitable are not logical for venture capital or even impact investing. And therefore, one must understand that some businesses require different kind of capital. Not because उसमें impact कम है या impact ज़्यादा है. Business that make no impact but have a same growth curve will also not get invested by VC. Will also not get invested by impact VC. So we need to be very careful when you get a rejection. You must ask yourself, was I relevant for this kind of a stake? Second question, do I want to go through it? Sometimes entrepreneurs actually take the money and they say investor को समझ में नहीं आता है. Investor buys into your story. See, investors' intelligence quotient is always lesser than entrepreneur's intelligence quotient. An entrepreneur on the hierarchy of intellectual quotient is always superior to a GP. Simply because a GP doesn't have that skill set, that nimbleness, that ability to take decision. Therefore, we sit one step behind you. मैं आपका navigator हूँ, मैं कभी driver नहीं बन सकता. You are always going to be a better driver. Once you understand that you are the driver, आप उसमें वही पेट्रोल डालेंगे जो आप, अगर आपने कोई गलत पेट्रोल डाल दिया, if you have bought a diesel car and उसके अंदर आप kerosene डाले जा रहे हैं, then the car will not fly, or it will actually give different outcomes. So invariably, when you go and meet an investor, ask yourself, वो investor क्या चाहता है? Because you are asking them something, you are not giving them something. Since you are asking them something, you have to plan yourself to tell them what you think they want to hear, without holding back something that you want to tell. So अगर आप impact वाले हैं, आपका introduction to yourself should actually bring out the impact story. After that, the numbers matter. To impact entrepreneurs, probably more interest in your story, and then they will also move on to the numbers. The third thing is actually seeking the relevance, whether उनका पैसा आपके लिए relevant है कि नहीं है. That choice you have to make. Most of the times, the investors may buy into your idea and become very difficult after they invest in you.
So my question is actually extension of what Poulami just asked. So at Aavishkaar, I mean, you have had many success stories, many exits, and you've made like good financial return. If there is evidence that you can actually reconcile both, you can make impact and you can make returns as an investor, why do you think many investors are actually not looking at impact, and why don't we have more impact investors than regular VCs?
So see, देखिए, you have to first accept that India is a resource constrained society even today. We have just about started seeing more money. I mean, look at mutual fund industry. For a long period of time, mutual fund has no impact. But the mutual fund industry is seen as a safe bastion for people to transition to. It is only now Reserve Bank of India governor has been saying that there is a transition from saving bank deposits to mutual funds, which means people in India have started investing in the growth of India.
Yeah.
Till now, we were very protective about our money. We wanted to keep our money in our bank fixed deposits and saving bank accounts. So we are a resource constrained society. A resource constrained society wants to protect its money, doesn't want to experiment with its money. हम अभी तक पैसा बचाना चाहते थे. So आपका जो impact investor है wants to actually play at the edge of innovation and challenges, and that requires extremely experimental money. So मेरा एक मित्र था, उसने मुझे बोला था, Vineet, you are not a venture capital fund, you are adventure capital. Now, adventure capital came from the idea that you are actually pushing the edges of what investing is about, because you are trying to solve a problem of exclusion. At the same time, you are going in early stage, you are actually supporting an entrepreneur, probably in a difficult geography. We as a country have a lot more entrepreneurial talent and much less capital. The entrepreneurial talent had to continuously prove that it is very good. And remember, impact entrepreneur has to be superior than an entrepreneur, because you have a much higher level of challenge.
Yeah.
And therefore, it should attract the best talent that the world has to offer.
I have a follow on that. So, what's your advice to bootstrapped companies as to when should they think about impact investment or investment in general? What's that threshold point when they should really look at external capital? What kind of circumstances make that happen?
There are three things that you should ask yourself. One, do you believe you can grow, instead of growing 4x, you can grow 40x? Is it possible? And will money make a difference? Second, do you want to shift your growth trajectory to 40x and feel comfortable about it? That's the second question. Do you really want to grow at that pace? It will change a lot of, first it will take away any balance or sense of balance you have in your life. It will actually push you into a very difficult situation. First time in your life you will become answerable to somebody who actually has a stake. Numbers that you predict will become sacrosanct. They will question the same thing again and again. Remember, investors, while they make a lot of effort to understand your predicament, they will never be able to understand it, because they are not run the business. So they will say, oh, you came, you told us this will happen and it didn't happen. Why? You know, 1 million reasons why it did not happen, but they would want one reason. And you will be at 6 and 7 trying to explain to them that one reason, because there's so many things. People came, you hired, they left, they were not able to stay on, something happened, markets changed, something else happened. Now, how can you control Israel and Iran goes to war? but you will be answerable for that.
Yeah.
People may change their buying decisions, people may change buying behaviors. So there are many other things that will play. It doesn't mean that investors don't understand things will change. As I keep saying, have 90% change in their business plan. So we all go through it, but our job is to ask that question, because we believe you are smarter and better than us. So, are you comfortable with these three things? If you are comfortable with these three things, the day you are comfortable, that's the day to raise the money.
I have a very specific question to the sector I deal with. So India is a country that has one of the highest genetic disease burden. And we are also one of the countries who cannot really afford therapies which are genomic medicines. So we started on a journey where we want to make it accessible to patients, especially bring it home. But what I see with Indian VCs is that they do not want to think out of what's ordinary today. They think this is going to be futuristic, so they don't want to take that risk. Do you think that shift is ever going to happen, where Indian VCs are also in a place where they think about, yes, this is going to take 8 years, but I definitely want to bet on this because it's of course high risk, but also high return. So do you think that shift would ever happen? Because I am yet to meet a VC in India who's ready to take that plunge.
More than resource constraints, success actually pushes more capital.
Yeah.
So, in the deep science and deep tech space, we have not seen enough successes come out of India. We do not understand how to deploy capital for very long term without expecting any spectacular return. Deep tech in any case is also actually nation building. As you rightly said, this is actually, India is carrying a very high genetic burden. So therefore, inbred or in-house solutions should actually be thought about. I think Government of India has been thinking about a fund of fund. So the government should be happy with 1:1 leverage. Should participate at least 50% of the fund. And then the investors or GPs like us should be able to find other 50% to support entrepreneurs like you. It's a shift that is just about to start in India. Hopefully in next 3 to 4 years, you will see large number of deep tech funds. There are some which already exist, but their ability and capability has not been so sound that they can actually take very long bets right now.
My next question is around scalability, right? In your investors' journey, have you come across a case where, say, you invested in an entrepreneur, and at some point in their journey, I mean, they had to make a decision between focusing on impact and on scalability, and what do you do in that kind of a situation?
So it happens, and it will happen in some cases where the idea has a transitioning problem. So, for example, you may actually be relevant in India, but you may be exciting in US.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are relevant in India, but exciting in US. In that case, I might invest in you because you are relevant for India and probably inclusive, etc. But for the entrepreneur, it could actually be exciting to build a business in India because you might become a unicorn faster there.
Has it happened when you have already invested and it happens later in their journey that they have to take that call?
In that case, the best you can do is keep quiet. Because if the survival of the company, see, a company actually is its own entity, right? It has to take care of all investors. I may be one impact investor, there may be other investors as well. There are employees, they have families. Now, you cannot actually say that, okay, because you are not going to do impact, these people's life don't matter.
Yeah.
The employees matter, everybody's matter. So at the end of it, what I have to do is I have to write that I failed on the impact, but probably delivered on the financial side. Well, if that happens, but you cannot stop the company from making the transition unless the transition is being done out of greed. So then I have to actually fight tooth and nail to make sure. If greed is the reason, you're making a compromise.
When you say, growth from 4x to 40x, is it a function of money? If not, what are some of the other expectations founders can have from the investors beyond money? What all resources, what all expectations can be had from the investor side?
So I have an unhappy answer for you, but so what I'll tell you is, so in general, and this is actually something which has not necessarily been a topic of great participation by investors. So I'll be very upfront from the investor's perspective. I personally have been a very strong advocate of a structured governance thought process amongst all startups. Second part of it is the investors themselves don't have time. 40, 50, 70, 80 investments. Do you really want to do it? No, we just investor meeting, 3 investors, one entrepreneur, do a phone call, all done, fine, let's move forward. I think what it has done is it has allowed extremely informal cultures to prevail, that then when you start going into the slightly higher inflection curve, forces bipartisan or individual thought process, really taking decisions which are probably not in the interest of the company, uneducated decisions being taken, most of the times a gap between shareholders and the promoters. So those kinds of behaviors start creeping in. Not because there is an intent issue, it is simply because you don't know anything better. And so I am actually a great believer that the first thing that all our investors should do is get involved into the part of governance where you do 2 things. One, you have to put together an audit committee and an internal auditor and a nomination and remuneration committee. These 2 committees should be formed, give a structure, and make the board take the right decisions. Invariably, mistakes made at the early stage cost you a lot 4 years, 5 years, 7 years down the line. When you are trying to sell your company, when you are looking for exits, FIRC nahi hai, money has come in, money can't go out. So all those issues come in. So governance, in my view, is one thing that an investor could bring to the table. Unfortunately, a lot of Indian investors have not spent time on governance. So they themselves do not know what governance means. It is inconvenient both for the entrepreneur and us. So both of us actually get together on the same side. And these are some of the challenges, but the best you can ask is, what is your thought on governance? Ask the investor. I am going to grow from 4 to 40. How do I actually cover? Because remember, the risk on the entrepreneur is 100x of the investor. Because if things go wrong, you are the one who is actually the criminal cases and the financial cases rained against you. So a well-governed board is your best chance of saving yourself from future risks. Something a lot of early stage entrepreneurs have missed out on.
Thank you so much for this impactful session on impact entrepreneurship, Vineet. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks.